Big old bags of brisket, oh yeah.
Gonna teach you to grind any type of meat and also clean and put your grinder back together.
Welcome back to Self-Built. Today I'm going to be teaching you and showing you how to grind meat. You can use this method for any type of meat, but what we're going to be showing you today is beef brisket. Brisket's a really good meat, has a lot of good flavor to it. It's high in connective tissue, which means it's a little bit tough, so you either have to cook it or smoke it. Get it to a certain internal temperature so it'll soften up, or you can grind it up and use it as ground beef, except it tastes way better than normal ground beef. Normal ground beef has different cuts that aren't as good as brisket, at least in my opinion. When you're grinding any type of meat, there's one step you want to do before you even start. And what that is you want to put the meat itself and the part that's going to be grinding the meat in the freezer for about 30 minutes to an hour or so. The reason you want to do that is, one, it keeps the meat cold so it won't go bad or anything, and also it helps it get ground up without getting stuck. It lowers the chances of that. So I'm going to do that real quick. Besides a meat grinder, you'll need a sharp knife to cut it into small enough portions that it'll fit down the funnel or the tube. Cutting board. And then I like to use just some different metal bowls. I'll show you how those work out, but one will be to catch it and the other is to prop this up because this isn't very tall. And last is just some bags so it'll be able to collect the meat, because I'm not going to cook it all at once. I'm going to do probably about half and half. If you don't have a grinder, I'll leave a link in the description of this one. I've had it for about 2-3 years. It's been great. No issues, no problems or anything like that. I would recommend, when you're gonna grind meat, if you haven't done it before, you wanna make it worth your while. What I mean is, there's a lot of parts that you have to clean really well at the end, which I'll show you the cleaning process. And I just feel like you should make a large amount so that way you don't have to do it often, because if you have to clean so much and it takes so much time, it might deter you from doing it in the future. So that's why I like to do big chunks of meat. Makes it more fun. And it's a great way to tenderize any type of meat. If you're doing chicken breast, pork butt, anything really. It just really softens it up, makes it super easy. Then you can cook it how you want it. It's been about 45 minutes, so I'm gonna pull the beef out and the grinder. When grinding the meat, you wanna try to keep it below 40 degrees, just as far as a sanitary aspect. So do the best you can with that. And then this is nice and cold. You can see it frosted a little bit. So I've got 3 different size bowls. This first one is going to be holding the extra fat that I don't want. This one I'm going to place the grinder on top, so that way this one that collects, it'll empty right into it, just like that. I do like to get my sink ready for cleaning before I do it, just because that's less time that I can possibly contaminate and touch all this while my hands are all nasty. You do need to wash your hands as you go. When cutting this, it does get a little bit messy, but if you do have it frozen, that does help keep the blood and the juices together a little bit more. You can do this 100% frozen, but I like to have a little bit of flex to it. And you can also see all this fat here. You can trim this as much as you want to where it can be whatever leanness that you prefer. Just know if you take the fat, all the fat out, there won't be as much flavor or juiciness. I'll take a large chunk and then I'll cut it into smaller sections that will fit into the grinder, and then I'll just feed it in. If it's possible, I try not to cut the bottom part of the package just so it'll keep the juices contained, but just do what you can. All right, got a big old chunky right here. What I like to do is I try to have my left hand just be the one that touches the meat and my right hand be clean, so that way I can maneuver a little bit without having to cross-contaminate stuff. My goal is to be able to cut chunks that will fit in this size diameter. One big reason you need a sharper knife is the fat is pretty tough. If you want, you can trim this before you cut it into slices. If you see some fat that's kind of gross, looks kind of oxidated or anything, now would be the good time to trim it off. And another tip is, if it's gonna have a lot of fat on it, don't have the fat be super duper thick. Depends on your grinder, but the fat is harder to grind, so you just don't wanna overwork your machine. I like to cut it into pretty thin strips, so that way it can just easily go through. I'll prep all of this and then I'll throw it in the grinder and then I'll cut another big piece. Just kind of take it in chunks. Look at that beautiful marbling though. That is delicious. And this chunk is pretty fatty, so I'm going to cut some of the fat off and put that aside because I'm not interested in that much. And there'll be plenty more fatty areas. All right, once you got it all cut and separated, I'll put my knife aside, not cut my hand off. Chances are pretty good that you'll be needing this little plunger to help give it a little bit of help. This might be a little bit loud, but you just turn it on. Oh, I do want to make sure this is tight too. I'll turn it on and just toss it in. Oh, plugging in is helpful too. There's some delicious ground brisket. You can see how dark and rich that is. And that's how you do it. Just take it in chunks at a time, cut it up. I'll discard what I don't want and then I'll grind it. I'll grind it until this is almost full and then I'll put it into a bag I'm gonna jump until we get to that point and I'll give you a couple more tips. Here's the second round of things getting ready to jump into the grinder. Bowl's looking pretty full. If I did another chunk and started to grind it, it would be overflowing. What I'm gonna do now is bag it. When you're at this point of putting it in the bag, if you're wanting to put any sort of seasoning or flavor in it, right now is a perfect time to do it. Otherwise, you can just toss it in the bag, which is what I'm gonna be doing. And you don't wanna pack it too tight. You want all the air cavities and everything in there, so if you're gonna do anything that's gonna be like a burger or something that's gonna get grilled and seared, and it's just gonna be awesome that way. Otherwise, if you compact everything, it'll still taste good, but it's just not gonna be at its best. So just be gentle when you're putting it in. And another thing you can do is you can run this through again. You can grind it twice to make it more consistent or fine if you'd like, but I don't have any issue with it just going through once. It does a really good job. All right, so that bag's looking pretty full. I'm gonna jump to a different one. Chances are I'm probably gonna have to do a little bit of playing around. I wanna have them to be about even. That's pretty good. So now I'm gonna cut another section, get it ready to go. Brisket isn't exactly square, so you do have to make do with the best you can. What I like to do is I'll just cut it into thin strips and then I'll cut it the other way so it's in smaller pieces. It just makes it easier and it feels less overwhelming if this is your first time and you're not exactly sure what to do. Oh no, where'd the brisket go? Here's the leftover fat. It is quite a bit. This was kind of a fattier brisket than normal. But you can keep this for flavoring or whatever you want to do, but honestly, I just toss it. If you recently watched Fight Club, I mean, you could make some brisket soap maybe. That'd be pretty sweet. And then there's a little bit left in there. I'll show you how to get it. I'm just gonna put my knife, let that start soaking, getting clean. Throw in there. Yeah, put that little guy in there. In there. I'm sure most meat grinders are the same, but you just want to loosen this. You'll be able to get a little extra. You gotta be careful if it's plugged in, just make sure you don't put your fingers where they shouldn't go. And to get this little plate out, you just push it for just a second. It'll usually push it out, just like that. And then that gives you a little extra protein. Just kind of clean that out as much as you can or want to. Then I'll just unplug it. And then this is the little blade right here that you want to get out. And then you can release this part. And then this part right here, this little auger comes out too. And you might get some meat that's stuck in here, so make sure it's not somewhere you don't want it to go. Just stick everything in here. So that was stuck in there. All right, so we've got that out of the way. And then we're gonna put the rest of this in the bag. Let's see how much these things weigh. I'm gonna wash my hands real quick and weigh these out. All right, let's see what we're left with. So we've got 4 pounds and 10 ounces there. And then we got 5 pounds and 1 ounce. So that's about 9.5 pounds. That's not bad. We started with 12.5 pounds. So I would say that's roughly around 3 pounds of fat that I trimmed off. I'm gonna refrigerate one bag for the next meal prep coming up, and then this is gonna be just in the freezer. Next, you just sanitize your whole area. Make sure you get rid of all the germs. Clean all of the pieces of your meat grinder. Let it dry, and that's it. Big old bags of brisket, oh yeah. Now we've got this all clean and dry. You may not know how to put this back together, so let me show you. There might be some differences with other meat grinders, but I'm sure it's pretty close to the same. So you'll put your little funnel, I don't know what this thing's called. Funnel majig. This little auger goes right in here. You'll feel it kind of get nice set in there. And you'll know it's in there because it's set pretty far back. Next will be the blade. One side's super flat, and that's the one that goes towards the machine. And then this right here is your screen. You'll just push that. There's 2 little tabs, and then this will just thread it right on. I won't go super tight. I'll just have it on there. And this is ready till the next grind. That brings this video to a close. I hope it helped you out, gave you some tips and ideas of what to expect if you're a first-time meat grinder. This is a great and fun way that you can make any different meals and meats more versatile, and it's also cheaper to grind your own meat than as opposed to doing it other ways. And that way you can also control how much fat is in there. It just gives you more control. It is more work, but you are worth it. If you've got any questions, make sure to leave a comment, like the video, share, and subscribe if you have not already. And we'll see you next time on More Self Build.